And we're back with the Coach Gary Edwards podcast. Coach Gary Edwards here with us by phone. Coach, it's been a while since we talked to you. 4 games since our last podcast together. Not going to spend too much time talking about these last 4 games, particularly your 3-game road stretch where you went 1-2 with losses to North Georgia and a close loss to Augusta, but a win at Young Harris. So you have to feel pretty good about that because that could have been ugly for you. And then you kids come back and beat Flagler for homecoming. What's the state of the Francis Marion men's basketball team right now?
Yeah, no, we're good. We're good. You know, you're right. We didn't play great against North Georgia. Came back and had a really good game against Young Harris. They're pretty good. They're a tough team to play against on the road, you know. And then we lost a tough one to Augusta. That was one we were a little disappointed in as well. We had our chances. Augusta's a great team. They're in second place right now in the conference, playing tomorrow night for first place, really, against USC Aiken. So, you know, that's to be expected, I think, on the road. It's not easy. And then, like you say, we had a really good homecoming win over Flagler. So 2-2 in the last 4 games. And then, boom, we have a big one ourselves tomorrow night against UNC Pembroke. So getting down toward the end of the season now, and every game is important.
Absolutely, Coach. As you mentioned, UNC Pembroke tomorrow evening. What challenges does Pembroke face for you guys going into tomorrow's game?
They're so big. They're a great rebounding team. They have a differential of almost 10 in the rebounding department, and that's where they do their damage. They miss some shots, but they put them back in. Their last game, they scored 122 points against Clayton, who's a pretty good team, and they had like 27 offensive rebounds. So, I mean, they just throw it up there. They go get it. They're so much bigger and stronger than we are. But, you know, that's going to be the big key, I think. If we can hold them off the boards, I think we can hold them down defensively a little bit. They're going to miss some shots, but can we get the rebound? That's going to be the big key of the game tomorrow night, I think.
Certainly going to be a challenge for your Twin Tower freshmen to get in there with the big boys who probably have a little bit more muscle on them. But like I said, hopefully they can hoss them there inside and hold their own. Coach,
exactly.
What does it take to, in your opinion, to be a great rebounder? And if you wouldn't mind, share some of your great rebounders from teams you've coached here at Francis Marion, or even teams you've coached previously at IUP or at Charleston Southern. What does it take to be a great rebounder?
Well, so much is just the desire to go get the ball. You know, I mean, it helps to have some strength and a little jumping ability, but you've got to have a knack for understanding where the ball is going, and you got to have a toughness. You know, you've got a toughness to really go get it with 2 hands. Probably the best rebounder I've ever coached is a guy named Dennis Mims that I had at IUP, Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Dennis was a transfer from Virginia Tech, where he was on the all-freshman team at Virginia Tech, and he was like 6'9" and could jump out of the gym. But he just had an unbelievable knack of going to get the ball, you know. So with his physical attributes and that determination, he was almost unstoppable to keep off the offensive boards. And when he got it, he would just go back up and dunk that thing. So, I mean, he was tremendous. At Francis Marion, we had a guy named Lakeith Turner, who was about 6'4", 6'5", who, again, had that desire to go get it. So much of his desire. You know, remember Dennis Rodman? He was a great rebounder. And I mean, he had some physical talent, but he just loved to go get the ball. And that's the biggest thing, you know, and there's fewer and far between guys this day and age that really want to go get it. But when you have some, it's good. Winston Hill for us, you mentioned tomorrow night, Calix Stevens, Ryan, Brandon Parker, all those guys are really going to have to do the job on the boards for us to be successful.
Absolutely, Coach. And I've heard you refer to another guy that you had at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Was Mike Beckles. And again, you talk about, you know, sometimes it's just all about the desire. If I remember right, he was, you know, a fairly undersized for a 4-man, but he could just really get after it from what you were saying.
Yeah, he did. Mike was great. He was like 6'5" at the most, but he was really strong, and he would just knock your head off to go get the rebound. He was like a Charles Barkley kind of guy. You know, Charles Barkley, he's like 6'4", and he was a great rebounder in the NBA just because he knew how to go get it, use his body. Mike Beckles was the same way. Yeah, Indiana, Pennsylvania, their great rivals were California, Pennsylvania, and they had a couple of really big guys, Division One transfers, 6'8", 6'9". There's no way Mike Beckles should be getting rebounds over them and around them, but he consistently did that. So it's really more the size of your heart, to be a great rebounder in college basketball.
Absolutely, coach. And it seems like I said, a kudos to you and your assistants. It seems like even through the season, which is typically tough to do, is actually to put on muscle and gain strength during the actual season. But it seems like a lot of your guys have been consistent in their strength, and I think that's why you've been able to compete with the Pembrokes and the Augustas of the world, people who are a little bit maybe a little bit taller and possibly more athletic, but it seems like
Yeah.
you have some strong guys that are committed to getting stronger and what that can do for them as far as rebounding and just all around game.
Yeah, no, they've done a good job in the weight room. And, we have a strength and conditioning coach this year for the first time for the entire athletic department at Francis Marion. And they've done a really good job with our guys. In the season, we only lift like once a week, maybe twice a week. But they do a good job, and we have maintained our strength throughout the season. It's going to be huge in the off season for our young guys. Winston and Calix Stevens are big guys to get more muscle on them. Alex Cox, some of our guards. And I really anticipate they're going to have great gains in the offseason because we have that strength and conditioning team now that can really help us out. So that's a big part of any young player's development this day and age. You got to put that strength and that weight on. That's for sure.
It just seems like a coach. Speaking on that, it's always strength and conditioning is always obviously at the football level, those strength and conditioning coaches are making easy six figures, but it just seems like more and more in kind of sports just in general, strength and conditioning and training is becoming somewhat of an art and something that is really prioritized by athletic departments, and that's pretty neat that Francis Marion has adopted that as well.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, it's huge. You go to some of the big schools, and I mean, it's amazing that you go into the locker rooms and they've got all the nutrition stuff there. The guys can get the muscle milk and the this and the that and whatever they want, as far as nutrition. And it's such a big. I mean, the players in everything now, football, basketball, whatever, baseball, they're just bigger and stronger than they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I mean, back in the old days, the guys were very talented, but they weren't. You look at some of the old NBA footage, and they were very talented players, but they just didn't have the muscle and the strength that the guys have today. So that's a big, big part of it is building yourself up and the nutrition. Tom Brady playing at 41, he's got his nutrition regimen and workout regimen, and it is an art form in this day and age. That's for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Coach, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to watch any Division One basketball here as of late, but I wanted to talk to you briefly about where you think the game is going. In the games that I've watched this year, and I've tried to watch as much ACC basketball, particularly as I could, and it just seems like the teams with a lot of talent, the Dukes, the North Carolinas of the world, it's almost like they're not even running plays anymore, and they're just relying on the superior talent of their players to win basketball games. At the Division One level, do you see that that's kind of a trend? It's more become now, what players you can get, and then just going and let them roll the ball out there and let them play. It doesn't seem like they're, the old school pick and roll motion
Right.
offenses are a thing of the past, right?
I think a lot of teams, and I remember Dean Smith, the old North Carolina coach. He said one time that his job was just to get guys in the right position, just get the ball in a certain position in their hands, and then just let their talent take over. And I think what you see is the teams that really have the great physical talent, that's what they do. You don't have to have a lot of movement. You don't have to have a lot of set plays to get the ball in a Zion Williamson's hands or whoever and just let them go to work. But where you see, I think, more coaching and more movement and that type of thing are like the Davidsons of the world and people like that don't have the great physical talent, but they still can compete with the big boys. Wofford's 24th ranked team in the country this year. They don't have the physical talent to compete with like SEC teams, and yet they beat South Carolina by 20 points because they do have some schemes. So I think it just depends on how much physical talent you got. I saw a great game the other day, and it did my heart good. Michigan State and Michigan. Michigan's a great team, but they're more a perimeter-oriented team. They shoot a lot of threes. Michigan State won that game like with some old school basketball, getting the ball inside. They didn't make a three. Michigan State did not make a three in the second half of that game, and yet they still won 77-70. So there's still some old school stuff out there. People still getting the ball inside. And I like to see that. I like to see that because I still am kind of old school guy. I think that's what you always can hang your hat on. Inside play, rebounding, that type of thing is something that you're going to have consistently. Whereas sometimes that 3-point shot is up and down. So it's interesting the way the game has evolved. But I still think those teams that have the hosses inside are going to prevail at the end.
Absolutely, Coach. I don't know if you caught any of the North Carolina Duke game, and we'll talk specifically about Zion Williamson's 30 seconds in that game. But you're right. It was nice to see how Carolina, you had some duck-ins, you had some high-low, and they
Yeah.
scored 62 points in the paint, and Duke really had no answer, especially when the three-pointers weren't falling. So, yeah, so it is, like I said, it is nice to see. And I think, like you said, inside play and rebounding and just all around good defense, that travels really well.
Oh, no doubt. Kentucky is had a resurgence here now because of their guy inside. I can't remember his name right now, but he's got a beautiful jump hook,
Hmm.
and Kentucky now is starting to go inside quite a bit. So, it is. You're having kind of a resurgence of the inside game here lately, and it's pretty cool to see, I think.
Absolutely. So back to the North Carolina Duke game. Did you happen to see Zion Williams blow his shoe out? So I got two questions for you, Coach. The first is, have you ever seen anything like that? And the second is, do you think that would have happened back in the day when you guys were rocking the Chuck Taylors?
No, heck no, no, never did a Chuck Taylor blow out. I mean, they got stained. I mean, remember the old Chuck Taylors? You sweat in them, and you'd get stained on them, but they never blew out because they were good, solid shoes. Wilt Chamberlain was like 300 pounds, and he wore good old canvas Chuck Taylors and never blew them out. Now we got all these fancy shoes. Our guys don't blow them out like in one incident like that, but they're always having tears in them and all that kind of stuff over wear and tear. Um, and I've never seen a shoe blow out like that. Now there's a lot of torque on that shoe, 285 pounds, and he really cut hard, so there was a lot of torque on that thing. But no, that's the thing I don't understand. Why do we have to have all these fancy? Hello, hello,
Oh,
can you?
can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can.
Okay. Uh,
Somebody, that was the shoe company calling me to
yeah,
say quit racking our shoes, quit
that's
racking
right.
our shoes.
That's right.
Adidas.
I'm pretty
We
sure
wear
you
Adidas.
guys rock Adidas, right?
Yeah, we do, and we
Yeah,
love our Adidas. We like Adidas.
sure,
You know.
sure. Yeah, yeah. So, like I was about to say, I'm sure Adidas and Under Armour were celebrating at the after that game, 30 seconds into that game for
Oh
sure.
man, really? Can you imagine? I know they were definitely. I remember. I'll go back old school. We used to wear Chuck Taylors when I was playing in high school. And I remember my senior year, I got a pair of Adidas, and they were red, white, and blue stripes because we were red, white, and blue. And that was like the first year you could get. And old Converse, the Converse came out with a leather shoe, and it had like a blue star in the middle with two red stripes. And it was like 1977, right in there, where maybe a little earlier than that, maybe 1974, that the leather shoes started coming into play. But before that, it was just canvas Chuck Taylors. You know,
Right. Uh, I,
what's your takes on?
I know a lot of. It's funny now. A lot of the Chuck Taylors. I know guys who are big into weightlifting will actually wear the Chuck Taylors because they say they're the best under a lot of torque, and especially when they're squatting, those flat bottom shoes work the best supposedly. So
Yeah,
that's
I
kind of
can see
funny.
that.
Yeah,
For a while there, they were fashion. I don't know if they're still, excuse me, fashionable or not, but sometimes they use them for fashion stuff. I don't know. So,
absolutely, absolutely. All right, last question. Last question,
okay.
Coach, and then we'll get you out of here because I know you need to get some rest for the big game
Well,
tomorrow, the big matchup.
gotta
Uh,
gear, gotta gear up.
I just want to know, and just like I said, I don't know how much Division One basketball you've been able to watch, but if you could give me right now who you think your four teams, who we're going to see at the Final Four. Where is the Final Four this year, by the way?
Minneapolis.
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 Who
I
are the
will not
four?
be going there. That's kind of cold.
Yeah, I was about to say that's a tough spot to have the Final Four
Yeah.
at that time of year.
Yep.
But if you
Yep.
could pick four teams, who do you think? Who could you see being the Final Four this year?
Well, I'll tell you, they say Gonzaga. I haven't seen Gonzaga that much, but they are beating people like a drum. And everybody says that they are really, really strong. They got a guard back that they didn't have at the beginning of the year. And you just watch some of their scores, they're just killing people. So I think they've got a pretty good chance. I think Kentucky's got a great chance now that they've got that inside game. They looked really good the other day. They
Hmm.
beat the heck out of Tennessee, and they seem to be playing really well. North Carolina, I think, has got a shot. They're playing very well. I think. I don't know. I don't know about Duke. I don't know about Duke. I think they rely so much on the 3-point shot. I mean, they've got some great players. There's no doubt about it. But depending on if Zion gets back, which he probably will, they're probably in the mix. But right now, I like North Carolina a little bit better than Duke. And then let's throw maybe a Big Ten team in there. A Michigan State, a Michigan, somewhere in there. When Michigan's hitting their 3-point shots, they're pretty good too. So, you
Absolutely,
know,
yeah. It's tough to root against Michigan State with Tom Izzo there, as many Final Fours as he's been
if
to.
they
Is
they beat Michigan without two of their starters the other day. If they got healthy, they'd really have a chance, I think.
right, right, for sure, for sure. Yeah, good call, Coach. And like you said, there's always that one team that makes it, or those two teams that make it that nobody expects. So that's why
Yeah.
March is certainly maddening. And Coach, I
Well,
lied
no,
to you.
hey, no,
Go ahead.
nobody wants to play Wofford. People like
Right.
that. Nobody wants to play people like that because they could upset anybody.
Right, right. Yeah, and Coach, I lied to you. I want to ask you one more question. I got it here in my notes, and I want to make sure I hit you with it. It seems like
Okay.
you talked about Wofford. It seems like in the state of South Carolina, basketball is making a little bit of a resurgence. I think you and I can admit that basketball primarily isn't known, or excuse me, South Carolina isn't known as a basketball state. It's always been a football state, and rightfully so with the teams we have here. But it seems like you think about Furman, you think about Wofford, you think about you guys, and I mean, Clemson and South Carolina are down, but it seems like basketball across all levels across the state. I mean, girls basketball as well is really coming on strong and looking sharp here. So, what can you say about the state of basketball in South Carolina, and where do you think it's going?
Well, yeah, no, I think it's great. You're right. The Southern Conference is kind of leading the way with Wofford and Furman. They've had great seasons this year. College of Charleston is tough. They've gotten their program going back in the right direction. Um, so it is, and I think a lot of it is, as you said, Clemson and South Carolina having a little bit down years. Maybe they play in such tough conferences. But Brad Brownell at Clemson and Frank Martin, they're great ambassadors for basketball. They're just two great guys. And I think it helps. I mean, I think it helps the high school game, it helps the AAU game, all that. When you're two flagship state universities, you got such good guys and great ambassadors for the game. I think it lifts it up a little bit. So I think you see that. I think you see that, lifting up maybe some of the smaller colleges in our division. Division two, USC Aiken is like 23-2, 24-2. The only two losses they have are to Francis Marion, by the way.
That's right.
But
That's right.
I mean, there's some great small college teams as well in South Carolina. But no, and I think you see that. I think in the old days, football coaches just coach basketball just as like a sideline, or they just throw somebody in there. But now everybody at the high school level are good basketball coaches, and they put a lot of time into it and everything. So I think you're going to get a better brand of basketball at the college level.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Coach, we certainly appreciate you taking some time with us this evening. Best of luck tomorrow. Go take care of the Pembroke. Are they the Braves? Is that right? The Pembroke
Braves,
Braves?
yes, they are.
Yes,
UNC
yes.
Pembroke Braves, yes.
Yeah, go take care of them. Let's take care of them. Finish out on a strong suit, and like I said, if you can win, one of these last two games, it's looking pretty good. That even if you don't win the tournament, that you'll get an at-large bid. So we're certainly hoping that for you here,
Yeah,
Coach. So best of luck to
yeah.
you.
All right, thanks a lot. Always good talking with you guys.
Absolutely. And don't forget Coach Edwards' podcast. We try to release them about once every week. You can catch those wherever podcasts are heard, whether that be iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever a podcast can be heard, you can hear it right there for you. Also, don't forget, we're on YouTube as well. Feel free to comment, talk to Gary. Gary also has a website, CoachGaryEdwards.com, where he has information about his book series, which can be purchased on Amazon, which are a collection of his columns throughout the years. Fantastic. You can read the reviews on his website. And you can also take a look at some of his information about summer camps. It's never too early to think about the camps Coach Gary Edwards runs, the 4 Great Days of Summer, which is a fan favorite in the PD area and across the state and really worldwide. Coach Gary Edwards basketball camps, the 4 Great Days of Summer. Take a look at some of that information and get some of those flyers out. This is the Coach Gary Edwards podcast signing off. We'll see you here in a couple days.